achieve quite a bit concerning biodiversity. My name is Lauren Small. I'm Director of the Canada Pavilion for Environment and Climate Change Canada. Bonjour à tous. Je vous souhaite la bienvenue au Pavillon du Canada à la COP15 et merci de vous rejoindre nous aujourd'hui. C'est avec plaisir que je vous présente notre prochain événement, le Consortium national des connaissances sur le caribou boréal, une collaboration fructueuse pour la conservation organisée par l'Environnement et Changement climatique Canada. It's a pleasure for me to introduce our next event, the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium, meaningful collaboration for conservation hosted by Environment and Climate Change Canada. Just a few housekeeping items before we start. Please make sure to turn your phones to mute. Ça serait apprécié de mettre vos téléphones sur sordine. This session is going to be recorded and is going to be live streamed. Donc, cette session sera diffusée en direct et sera enregistrée. The panel discussion will be hosted by Amanda Sheedy. Based in Dadague on the unceded territory of Kanien'kehá:ka, with her family, Amanda has supported grassroots community engagement and planning for over 20 years. She is skilled at designing and facilitating processes to assist people think together and develop solutions collaboratively, including across sectors. Her work with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island spans more than a decade, supporting Indigenous food sovereignty projects and Indigenous-led planning on food, health, research, and conservation. Amanda co-leads the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium's Indigenous Knowledge Circle and facilitates the consortium's annual meetings. Please join me in welcoming Amanda.
Thank you so much. Merci. It's such a pleasure to be here on the unceded territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka, what is known as Tiohtià:ke or Montreal, and it's an even greater pleasure and honor to be up here on this panel with my esteemed colleagues from the Indigenous Knowledge Circle of the National Boreal, I always get it wrong, National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium. I keep telling Matt we need to change the name because it's just such a mouthful. Before I say anything else, I'd like to welcome Senator Beatty to the podium to start us in the right way today.
Thank you, Amanda. I would like to say the opening prayer in my native language. I'm a Cree Indian from northern Saskatchewan, so if you can bear with me, I will say the opening prayer in Cree. Muktayin na nangitsigisigogayin, kinanaskumit na wasagisipak. Ipimamawin niya nguta. Kitaya tapigiskwat tamago mutse. Sakawat tihok, wana na to kutaga at tihok mina. Kasi mat siya ko matihok, kaya so si ibi mat siya ko si musok mina was si na to kutaga pitskisisak. Siman to sa iti menana notes kaya kisigak, wes pigis kuwin midnan it nisiwin, ikaw mina nisto tamuin. Kaya kito kutaga sa gitnyok sa iti mek, kaya kito mina ipmutiutsik. Yung mina yung nagtagititi matsiko kakita with New York kaya pinakatako iti kaot siya siman to kinto tamatnan ta sawidi matsik yung si kinto tamatnan Jesus with winig. Amen. Thank you, Mother.
Miigwech, thank you so much for that. It's one of the things I love most about working with Indigenous people is that the sacredness of the work that we do gets brought right into the room, right from the get-go, and just helps to ground us all in how important these conversations are, how important this work is that we're speaking about today. So thank you. Before getting the ball rolling, I just wanted to say, obviously I think we all know that the deal has been signed. I think we need to applaud that. It's a historic day today. And, I just want to highlight, I haven't had a chance to dig into the details, but according to The Guardian, Indigenous is mentioned 18 times in this new deal. and centers Indigenous rights in conservation for the first time in history. This is a good day. This is, we don't get successes in this field that often, and so let's hold that as we go into this conversation. The mood is much higher here today than I've seen it. I've had the chance to be here over a number of days, so it's a really important moment, I think, for the work we're talking about, and for this, it's an important moment for collaboration. And I just want to say that I've worked with a lot of different people. I'm a consultant, by the way. I don't work for Environment Canada, but I have the honor and pleasure of supporting the good work of the NBCKC. And I find it's a really special place. It's Matt, who you'll have a chance to meet in a moment, is the fearless leader of the NBCKC and has really worked hard to center Indigenous people in the work of the NBCKC. And it's a rare thing to have a table where you have provincial, territorial, federal government, academia, industry, and Indigenous people sitting together and having these conversations. It's not a scientific straight line process, right? But one thing that I have really held on to, the last time we had a meeting, we asked people to speak to some challenges that we had kind of framed at a previous meeting. And it was really heartening to see that federal and provincial governments brought to the table the challenges that they were having in engaging and working across Indigenous and non-Indigenous lines. This, to me, was a huge sign of success. I think it was 80% of the presentations of all of the members that a year ago. And we can't underestimate the value of dialogue and creating these spaces for cross-sectoral collaboration. They are hugely valuable. And we're bringing you a little piece of that magic here today on this panel by having a really great, mostly Indigenous centered, because that's what we do, right? We want to hear first and foremost, but hear how that relates to other work that's going on and how that's influencing the work that's going on in other sectors. So, with that as a table setting, I would like to welcome Matt Buckner to this. I think I should read your bio, Matt. That's fine. No, you're going to introduce yourself? Yeah. Okay. Welcome, Matt Buckner.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, my name is Matt Beckner, and I just want to say what a pleasure and an honor it is to be here today. And just echoing what Amanda said, that last night was a really big moment, a really big announcement, but what we need now going forward is how are we going to do this, right? How are we going to form meaningful collaborations? And that's what I think we're excited to tell you about today, a little bit about the NBCKC, because we've been trying it for 5 years. But just as an introduction, so my name is Matthew Beckner, and I work for Environment and Climate Change Canada out of the Science and Technology branch. And over the last 5 years, I've had the great honor and privilege of leading the work of the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium. And today we're going to be talking a lot about caribou, and some people in the audience are watching our live stream. I'm excited to say that this is live streaming across the world right now, so hopefully everything is going well with the technological issues. But I'll start off by just talking really quickly about caribou. In Canada, we're really lucky to have multiple types of caribou. We've got barren ground caribou in the north, we've got mountain caribou out west, but for most of this talk, we're going to be talking about the type of caribou called boreal caribou. And where do boreal caribou live? Well, that's what makes them kind of interesting and challenging. They're found in a lot of places in Canada. They're found in 7 provinces and 2 territories. They tend to not move around as much, and they don't hang out in large herds. And when they are in the boreal, they tend to be in the trees. So all of these factors make it really hard to know where caribou are and to monitor them a lot of times. So why should we care about conserving caribou? Well, to say that caribou is an iconic species in Canada is a huge understatement. You know, caribou are culturally and spiritually important to several Indigenous communities across the country. They're an important food source for many people, and they're valuable in traditional practices. There is a huge ecological component to protecting caribou as well. We were talking a lot at this conference about biodiversity and conserving biodiversity, and caribou, especially boreal caribou, present us with a really awesome opportunity. If we can protect habitat for this vast-ranging species, we're going to be able to conserve habitat for a lot of other species as well, and that's going to enhance biodiversity conservation for the whole country. So it's kind of a win. So I think we can all agree that, yeah, we should probably put some attention into conserving space for caribou, but it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. You know, their extensive range in Canada, their reclusive behaviors, and the fact that there's so many jurisdictions involved in the management of caribou make conservation for boreal caribou a challenge. So how do we accomplish this? Well, we need a new model. When the consortium convened about 5 years ago, we all understood that the way things were going with silos and non-inclusive collaborations weren't working. They were moving too slowly for caribou. So we needed a new model, and this new model would need to be built on meaningful collaboration. And we're going to talk about that word meaningful throughout the day today. Really delve into that. It needed to be based in Indigenous leadership. And finally, it needed to be inclusive of all knowledge systems. We have to recognize that there are so many players in this world, and we all have our own circle of influence. And if we bring those players together, we're going to be so much more impactful for caribou. This model would also need to be more responsive and nimble. We need to get faster at figuring it out, what we still need to know, and sharing what we've learned, and mobilizing the knowledge that we've collaboratively gained. And in this way, we're going to have the biggest impact for boreal caribou and other species. So this was the impetus for forming the National Boreal Caribou Knowledge Consortium, which is an open and inclusive forum. We have a huge membership and diverse membership, and all are welcome at the table. If in your job or in your community you work with boreal caribou, if you have a knowledge about boreal caribou, then you're welcome at the table. We have federal, provincial, territorial governments. We have Indigenous communities and organizations there. We have wildlife co-management boards up in the north. Academics, industry, ENGOs, and consultants all make up the membership. Each member of the consortium has a say in the priorities of the NBCKC, and together we steer the ship to determine what we already know, what still needs to be figured out, and how we can best use the information that we've gained collaboratively. So how is this grand experiment going? Well, in only 5 short years, we've accomplished a tremendous amount. We now have about 55 main table members. So this is the main table, but when you extend the membership out to all of the number of working groups, knowledge networks, and health networks that have formed in the last 5 years, our membership sits at about 180 now, which is quite impressive. We've authored over 60 impactful and collaboratively built tools and resources. We've convened communities of practice. So what are these? These are hugely valuable in and of themselves. It's the people who are doing the work for caribou across the country. We pull them together and meet every month, and we ask, hey, what did you do last month? How is that going? What did you learn? Can we do it over, if you're trying this in Alberta, can we try it in Quebec and see how we can make the biggest impact? So those are our communities of practice. We've built strong relationships, formed impactful partnerships. We've pooled capacity, which is huge. A lot of us come with little piles of money, but together it's a massive pile of money that we can do a lot of work with. For example, creating a powerful knowledge sharing portal, which is our CCLM portal. That was a multi-level partnership, which was really cool to see happen. And today, I'm speaking for us all when I say we're so proud and honored to be invited to talk a little bit about what we've learned in the last 5 years, in hopes that other people in this room or listening across Canada or potentially the world who are also about to embark on a collaborative conservation story of their own will maybe learn a little bit about what we've done in our first 5 years. And we're still learning as well, so hopefully we can learn from some of you after the talk today. The 5 panelists that are on the stage today represent both the old and the new membership of the consortium. And ideally, we would have had all 55 members up here, but I think they're all watching on the live stream and cheering us on. And before I hand the microphone back over to our facilitator, I really just want to say how important relationship building is to all of this. If you don't have trust and belief in one another, and I can honestly say I have a relationship with every one of these members on the stage, and we wouldn't have gotten as far as we have been without that trust and that relationship. So anyway, with that, I'm going to pass the microphone back over to Amanda Sheedy, who has been with us for pretty much the entire 5 years, and as our fearless facilitator. So thank you.
Okay, now we finally get to hear from everyone here beside me. So rather than introducing you, I'd love it if you could all just take 1 minute. It'll be a short one so we can get into the substance. And just tell us a little bit about yourself and your relationship with Caribou. Walter.
Good morning. My name is Walter Andreef. I live in Slave Lake, Alberta, which is right in the middle of the boreal forest. I'm a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta, and I work in their consultation office with several issues. I've been in dialogue and undertaking traditional land use studies with our people for many years now, and I've been pleased to be a member of the NBCKC, as well as a few other groups that I'm involved with the Environment and Climate Change Canada. And you know, it gives me great pleasure to come here to talk about the caribou. We have 4 caribou ranges in our traditional territory, which is the traditional territory of the Lesser Slave Lake Métis people. If you don't know where Slave Lake is, you might know where Lesser Slave Lake is. You can actually see the large lake from space if you look at it. It's sort of mid-northern Alberta. I love to work with issues with the caribou and talk to our people about the caribou. If you go way back a couple of hundred years ago, many of our people arrived in the area working for the Northwest Company and the Hudson's Bay Company. And one of the things that we did as part of the kind of the tasks that we lived with was to hunt and fish for the companies. So we got to know a lot of different types of ungulates, and we would hunt them as well. Caribou isn't preferred, but we as sort of a staple. But when other game is down, I know people that actually do consume caribou at one time. Not so much lately because the numbers are down. But anyway, that's a little bit about me. Am I good?
Perfect.
Okay, thanks.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour. C'est neat to get. My name's Matthew Munson. My Dene name is Yves Claus Dedzina. I'm a technician for Deneda First Nation in northwestern Alberta. I've been working with my community in Caribou for 12 years as a staff member, a director of the lands department, and also a consultant. I have a background in earth science from the University of Calgary. I was really interested in geographic information systems, and I found a lot of really good opportunities for traditional knowledge, environmental science within, you know, geographic information systems and mapping and data. So that's what I like to do for. It's kind of weird. I like to do it for fun too. I'd probably do it if it wasn't my job. And just working with my community and hearing the stories about caribou, about you know, biophysical habitat, you know, where the caribou migrate to and from, hearing about the life cycle from elders that grew up in the caribou ranges. They, you know, caribous were their neighbors and still are for us. And so, just being a part of documenting that knowledge, trying to build tools and you know, apply that knowledge to kind of scientific methods is something that I really find interesting and fun. And maybe I'll get into it a little bit later, but we've got some pretty neat tools that we've developed, and it seems to be that you know, the ability to bring forward kind of local knowledge into you know, a regional setting, into a provincial or territorial setting, into a national level setting is you know, something that is I've been, like I said, I've been doing this for 12 years. This is, you know, really one of the only venues that is kind of you know, national in scope. And conservation really is necessarily local. And, you know, all of these localities, you know, need, you know, to be talking to each other. And so this network is really a great opportunity for that. So thank you. Merci.
Good morning again. My name is Peter Beatty. I'm from northern Saskatchewan in the boreal forest. I was born there in a log cabin. I don't want to go that far back though. So, but I'm one of the newer members of this group, and I was honored to be asked to be part of it. And as I said, I grew up in the boreal forest, and I've been around woodland or boreal caribou, as they're being referred to, and grew up in that area of northern Saskatchewan. And in those times, we had a lot of caribou in our area. And in recent times, they've kind of disappeared. I know, just from reading literature, that they were put on the endangered species. I'm not sure that they're still there, but however, in recent years, it would seem them come back a little bit. So that's, for me, my experience with caribou, it's traditional. And I know about woodland caribou, having grown up around them. But a little bit about me, I've been in First Nations politics for 28 years, 20 years on the band council for the Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation, 8 years as their chief. I retired last year, retired for a little bit, I guess. And anyway, I'm a senator now with the Prince Albert Grand Council, which is made up of 12 First Nations in northern Saskatchewan. And Peter Ballantyne being one of the largest, we have 8 communities. We cover our traditional territory, covers most of northeastern Saskatchewan right to the Manitoba border. And we have almost 12,000 band members in that area. That includes the on-reserve and the off-reserve. However, as I say, I've been in politics for 28 years, and but during that time as well, I've tried to take time to be in our traditional territory. I'm a trapper as well. Granted that I wasn't a full-time trapper in that 28 years, but a weekend trapper. So I was in the traditional territory, and I can tell you a lot of the stories that, that go back to 1960 and to now, in terms of the caribou and our traditional areas. But that's just a little bit about me. I speak fluent Cree. I think I speak fluent English, sorta. And I can say bonjour, mes amis, comment ça va, things like that. It's high school French, but I forgot about that. I dropped it in grade 10, so don't expect me to say anything else in French. I can say something in French, but it wouldn't be appropriate here. So, and anyway, that's just a little bit about me. Thank you very much.
He, my neighbor. I come from the same territory as Peter. My name's Robin McLeod. I work for the Prince Albert Grand Council. My Cree name is Kiwit Nochmasquakak Stidemat Totidnima. It's a bit long, but that's my spirit name, Cree name. I come from a small community of Stanley Mission. It's on the Churchill River in northern Saskatchewan. The caribou that I'm familiar with come from the Lac La Ronge, which is a big lake. That's where they frequent in the winter on the ice, and they move in circles in that region, and I find that very unique. And you know that they're going in circles when you try and meet them somewhere. They won't be there. They're so smart. So I've had that experience as a young person. I was raised on the land from a very young age. Then my dad decided that he was going to retire from being a trapper and also a guide, and a guide for fishing and a guide for hunting moose. We decided to move back to the community. I was about 9 years old when I started learning about English. I was fluent within a week. No, I'm just kidding. I picked it up well at an early age. My sisters would speak English all the time to each other, and I'm always right behind their tracks, wanting to do what they were doing. Like they were out and about in the community. I didn't know too much about the community. And I remember the one time they said, we'll hide our tracks. And they said that in English, and they thought I didn't understand, but I understood that they didn't want me there. So they would hide their tracks so I wouldn't be able to track them. So I was raised in that community of Stanley Mission. I spoke fluent Cree. There was no English in the house, just Cree. And it's a little bit different now. Even I make that mistake. I speak English to my children when I should be speaking Cree to them. Especially when they were younger, I should have done that. But I've been with the consortium since the initial. I'm one of the originals with Matt. Matt, what did you do? You hired me or? No. Anyways, that's who I am. Robin McLeod. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. My name is Laurie Neufeld, and I work with Imperial Oil out of Calgary, Alberta. And I am honored to have been on the NBCKC since its inception in 2018, and I think we actually had a meeting in 2017. I'm a biologist and a biodiversity specialist within my company, and I just want everybody to know that I don't have that cultural connection to caribou, but I do have a personal connection to the boreal forest. And I grew up in Edmonton and spent a lot of time in northern Alberta in my childhood, and that boreal forest means something to me. And so I've spent my entire career trying to ensure that our industry does a better job with regards to development and minimizing future footprint, and then also restoring the footprint that we've created. So it's an honor and a privilege for me to be sitting up on stage with these Indigenous leaders across the country. Caribou, from a business perspective, is a risk to, I think, all of our resource industries across the country, whether you're talking mining, forestry, or oil and gas. And we all need to work collaboratively to ensure we put caribou and caribou habitat back on that path to recovery. And so that's what we're doing here as part of the NBCKC, and that's what we're doing as part of many other collaborations we have going on across the country.
Thank you. Okay, so now that you have a good sense of this wonderful panel up here, let's jump into the heart of the matter that has brought us all around this table today, which is collaboration. What does meaningful collaboration look like to you? What are some of what's required for a collaboration to be successful? I'd love it if you could draw on a story, on a past experience that comes to mind when you think about this question, and just tell us briefly about it. Mention also, there's always some trade-offs or challenges. We'll get into the challenges in the next question, but just, what have you had to leave aside or trade off as you sit down and collaborate with others? If you can tackle all of that in 2 minutes, that would be great. Do your best. 2 minutes. Over to you. I think we'd like to hear from you first, Senator Beatty. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. Yeah, in my experience, in terms of collaboration, if you're going to get anything done, you're going to have to collaborate with different sectors different areas, whether it's government or NGOs or whatever. I found that to be true in my experience. One of the things I'd like to maybe touch on is that when you talk about the biodiversity, in Saskatchewan, this would have been back in the 80s, 90s, I think it was. We had what we call a co-management group, which was made up of stakeholders in our area, which would mean lodge owners and, our commercial fishermen, our trappers, and our chief and council, of course, but and also the province of Saskatchewan and the environment department. And we managed at that time to save our spawning areas because our traditional activities there are centered around fishing, trapping and hunting. And we were having problems protecting or people not respecting the spawning areas because our main species that we catch there commercially is walleye or pickerel, however you want to phrase that. I don't know what you call it here, but a very expensive fish, and in the restaurants at least. Anyway, we managed to get to an agreement to close off those spawning areas collaboratively with the support of the chief and council and all the stakeholders in our area. And that was back in, I believe it was in the 80s. I know we were having problems from the, prior to that. And today that's a very strong fishery. So that was a success story. The other part of that was that we agreed with the province to set aside certain areas, that we call representative area network sites, RAN sites they call them, RAN. And these are representative area sites. They're huge. Some of them are fairly huge areas where there's no development allowed. They want to preserve the biodiversity in that area. And so we agreed to that. And so to this day, that's what we have. There are certain RAN sites in Saskatchewan, and you can probably Google that. You can ask the all-knowing Google. And it's kind of like, what's that story about the Wizard of Oz? The all-knowing Oz. It's, only in this case, it's the all-knowing Google. And you'll see that there are areas there that are protected in Saskatchewan. And I think it's great. And I hope that, with this new agreement, 30% of the planet will be saved for biodiversity by 2030. I know it's ambitious, but like someone, I think it was Amanda that said, how do we get there? Well, we get there by collaboration. We get there by collaboration, everybody having a target and so on. So that's just a little bit of my experience. I can go on and on, but I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a great story to start off this sharing on what makes meaningful collaboration. Go ahead, Walter.
Hello again. So a lot of the things that I undertaken with regards to consultation and engagement with agencies and proponents of various projects out there involved time and energy. Time and energy on the part of my time in terms of undertaking specific projects, but also in what they undertake to kind of review some of the potential environmental impacts with a project that may potentially impact our rights to be able to, our right to be able to hunt and fish on the land and the waters. So what we do like is when we work with companies is that we ask them to provide the funding so that we can actually undertake review of their projects, because some of them can be fairly technical in detail as well as quite large. So it dedicates a lot of time from our usual community activities to undertake this kind of work. Fortunately, I have some really good people that I work with and I collaborate with, and these are the people who are the members of our community. They want to play a part in reviewing some of these projects, and then when I get those opportunities to take care of some of that and undergo some traditional land use assessments on a larger footprint project, they really appreciate that. And companies that step forward with those kind of activities are looked on as favorable partners as we kind of work together, because both our community gets a voice in perhaps mitigating some of those impacts, but as well as the company develops a really good, solid relationship with us. You know, I could say that there's been at least one company that really has stood out for us in kind of engaging with us in a meaningful way on both the aspect of not only environmental management, but also in terms of mitigating some impacts on caribous. They've met with our people and our elders on many occasions to tell us how they would be offsetting lands for forests that they were cutting down. They put together an Indigenous working group that comprised of various nations in the area, as well as ourselves, to kind of talk about the caribou management in the area. Right now we've got, and without going into it in too much detail, I think I mentioned earlier we have about 4 caribou ranges in the area. The majority of them are about 60% disturbed, meaning that there's some development that is that's taking land away from the caribou. And that's an important thing to recognize. So any little bit we can get with collaboration is really useful. And particularly with companies that are undertaking to bring our monitors on board. So all of that is in the spirit of collaboration, partially through agreements, partially through phone calls. But nothing is better than developing a good relationship. And one particular company stands out there that we've worked with for the last several years, almost as long as I've been on this community here. And this is TC Energy. It's been very, very helpful in working with our community.
Thanks, Walter. Over to you, Matt. Would you like to share with us what makes for meaningful collaboration?
Yeah, thanks. So echoing other panelists here, collaboration really is about relationships at its heart. So collaborations, if you kind of look at it just generally, you've got a group of people and organizations that, there's, a need to do something, bringing people together that can agree that, something should be done, and, agreeing that we are going to do something, really almost is necessary to set the stage on, okay, now that we've got this agreement and we've all come together and we've got different experiences and strengths, what can we do? How are we going to do that? And ultimately, how is that going to try to address the concern or even elevate the opportunity? So, for example, in my community, we have a boreal woodland caribou camera, remote sensing motion triggered camera array, and we have 36 cameras up there in really remote part of the province, northwestern Alberta. Bistigeau Lake is our lake. We've got some documentaries about it. We were on CBC The National not too long ago, and I'm going to plug our website. It's www.bistigeaulake.ca, and there's links to some of the work that we've done and about the camera array, and the media links are on there as well. But in terms of collaboration, aside from talking generally about what collaboration is and what it can do, really, my community members tell me, that we've always been looking out for caribou, even in times past, prehistory, living on the land within the natural laws and living within the carrying capacity of the environment and habitats and species. The idea of a seasonal round where you would harvest throughout the year, and do this kind of journey, and then the next year you do a similar journey, but not exactly in the same place. So you're giving the land and water a time to regenerate until you come back and harvest again. And so, in terms of bringing that information into caribou range planning and collecting data about caribou and trying to provide information that can be used for management or operational level implementation of plans. That's really important story. But at the end of the day, monitoring caribou, having these camera programs, isn't protecting caribou. Without protecting the habitats, without protecting the areas that they go to and reducing some of these pressures on the populations of caribou, monitoring caribou, like they're on a downward trajectory here. We've got climate impacts as well as development. I feel that the camera program and making data and having management plans really are an intermediate step to kind of moving the lever politically on, let's do something about this. Let's have some protected areas. Let's, turn the monitoring into protection. Because otherwise, sometimes I fear that, we're just documenting their demise. And I don't think that that's what this is all about. Just finally, here to the big news this morning, I really feel hopeful for the first time in a really long time. And I'm really excited to see, where this collaboration can go and what local things can we now enhance and improve as we do our community work and what opportunities do we have to bring at a national level, at a global level now. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Robin, over to you. What does meaningful collaboration look like?
It's a huge concept when you start talking about braiding the knowledge between the Indigenous people and Western science. I keep making this speech over and over again, and I think Matt knows this speech, and that's braiding means coming together, and it's not about one knowledge taking over the other knowledge. It's they have to meet in a central location where everybody is equal, and I think that's the best way to collaborate. We don't come into this picture without having any knowledge. We have a tremendous amount of knowledge coming from us Indigenous people. So we bring in tons of information. Matt knows this, and we want to be equal with science, but we don't want to be absorbed by science. Science cannot be end all. There's other knowledge there that exists that's older than science, and that's our knowledge. So that's what we bring into this collaboration theme. So I think that's the gist of collaboration, is actually identifying our own knowledges and bringing them together and working together. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Well said. Yeah. Lori, we'd love to hear from your perspective on the industry side of things.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of working boreal caribou for the last 10 years of my career, and I can say we have so many great collaborations that are in place. And for me, the key thing to collaboration is trust. We need to build that trust, and that trust doesn't come right from the start. You got to build that over time. And these collaborations need to be long-standing, long-lived. When I developed our caribou strategy for our company, I had 4 different pillars to our strategy. And I'm happy to say that we have collaborations in place for all of those. And when I look at them on the restoration side, we ended up setting up something called the Regional Industry Caribou Collaboration in northeastern Alberta, roughly around the 2013-2014 time period. And that group is really focused on doing range level restoration efforts across lease boundaries. We recognize that we can't do it within our lease boundary. That's not meaningful. Just monitoring cameras is not meaningful. We need to have some action on the ground. So the restoration was critical for that. The other bucket to our strategy was research. We need to participate in collaborative research. And one of the key research programs that we've been involved with is something called BERA, which is the Boreal Ecosystem Recovery Assessment Partnership. And that's a collaboration amongst 3 universities in Alberta, in Canada, University of Alberta, University of Calgary, and University of Waterloo. And a great number of other collaborators are involved in that. The other bucket was kind of lease deferrals, and that's where we as an industry advocated to Alberta Energy to defer some mineral tenure in Alberta's caribou ranges so we could slow the pace of development. But I think the most meaningful collaboration for me was on our conservation side, and that was where I had the opportunity to work with Mikisew Cree First Nations in their Indigenous-led effort to conserve the Kataskanou-Nuene Wildland Park. And I think that was just the most impactful initiative that I've ever been on. It was critical that we had that trust and we maintained that trust, and we ended up relinquishing an oil sands lease in support of that. But our commitment to that didn't end when we relinquished that oil sands lease. That commitment carried forward to today. I still champion Indigenous-led conservation, both within my company and within our industry. I think it's really critical.
Go ahead, Matt.
I might just tag on there too that for me, the difference between just collaboration and meaningful collaboration is when your collaborators can actually see where their input is landing. Our members at the consortium, that's something I've always tried to make sure is that if we're collaborating on something and we receive input from 15 people, those 15 people on the final document can go, oh, hey, I put that in there. You know, you have to be able to show your members how they're valuably contributing.
Fantastic. Yeah, and these themes are themes that I've definitely heard over and over again, you know, the centrality of relationships, taking the time to develop those relationships, to resource those relationships, so important. I think we're learning as settlers that it's important. You know, often we come to the table with jobs and paychecks, and that it's really important to provide that same resourcing to Indigenous partners as they come to the table, fundamental to this work going forward. And the ethical space that Robin spoke about so eloquently, the weaving of these knowledge systems in a space that is truly respectful. Again, something that I think we try to embody at the NBCKC, and I'm increasingly seeing in my work around the country. But it's a challenge, right? We're trying, and we make mistakes, and we try again, and we learn from that. So thank you all for sharing a bit of your experience. I'd love us to turn our attention now to the NBCKC. I know I'm skipping a question, but you know, the 2-minute window we were trying to stick to each is a little challenging because we all have so much to share. So I'd love it if we could turn our, and I'd love to, we're going to try and save some time at the end for questions, just so you know. So using the NBCKC as an example of multi-stakeholder collaboration, Walter, you've been involved now with the NBCKC for many years. What have you found meaningful or different about the way that the NBCKC works?
Thank you. Looking back from when I first joined, Matt has mentioned earlier about seeing your comments in the edited documents, and really, I come at it from two angles as an Indigenous person who happens to be a scientist, and when I see, I don't consider myself a caribou expert. My background, actually, my formal education is in environmental geology, which is more about rocks and water. But I've been learning a lot as I kind of go along on the biology side from biologists who are part of the IKC, as well as those that I run into in my day-to-day work. But what's been really, really meaningful to me, and I remember when we were developing the model, after we first got started, there was lots of people, and I would literally be calling in from the side of the road, somewhere out in the bush, and we would be having one of our meetings, and we'd be talking about what's important for the caribou, how are they getting stress on them from predators and from development and all these other things. And I remember we got into a heated discussion amongst all the scientists about, what role does climate change play in all of that? And, like being on the ground and in the bushes, I am kind of a person like that. Massive fires we've had around there, like huge fires that start their own clouds and lightning. It's just a horrible spectacle to see, but it's a real thing. And climate change has changed the weather. I don't have to tell people here that. And what I wanted to say is that we the scientists started to discuss it. All of us were bringing different equations to it, and I was, of course, because I'm a field guy, I was bringing my field perspective of that, and it got into the model. And today we have a really good model, and so that spirit of collaboration was real and tangible because it was producing results. And what I've seen lately, as well as over the last couple of years, we've been working on a toolkit, Beyond Stewardship, a toolkit for respectful collaboration with Indigenous peoples. And all of that is about braiding Western science and Indigenous knowledge to help bring better outcomes for the caribou. So we currently have a draft of that toolkit, which is it's currently, I'm not sure exactly, have we gone live with it yet? I'm not sure where it is today.
We are so close,
so
close.
Okay, yeah. I've been away doing other things here the last couple of months, and actually they renamed it on me, I think, over the last month. That's why I was kind of anyway, I wasn't quite sure if I had the words. But as it was, this is a wonderful tool where non-Indigenous organizations can utilize this tool to get stronger collaboration with Indigenous groups on not only the caribou but also other land impact issues. In my own heart, and from what I see from in the bush there, the caribou is like the canary in a coal mine. We have to look after the land so that those animals can survive, because they're interlinked with the biology. They're interlinked with the lichen and the mushrooms and that wonderful, beautiful, deep old forest, which you can just lay down on the moss and just you could smell and feel the nature around you. All of this is important. So collaboration is a meaningful way of kind of bringing in, particularly with the toolkit, another perspective to a company that may want to figure out what is that Indigenous piece that I'm missing. So I'd invite any industry people who are watching this presentation right now, check it out. Check it out on the CC. Can somebody say the CCLM? Oh, perfect timing. Oh, okay. Okay, and I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Walter, and thank you for plugging the toolkit that so many of us have put some blood, sweat, and tears into. I was hoping to have it ready to launch here, but alas, these things never go as planned. So soon, stay tuned. Matt, you're a newer member of the NBCKC. I'd love your perspective on what's brought you to the NBCKC and what you hope it might bring to you. You spoke about the sort of local to national, national to local. How do you see being part of a national network like this supporting your important local work?
Yeah, thanks. So of course the opportunity to share in the wealth of knowledge that individual communities and collaborators have. The more expertise and information you have to approach a challenge is always better than less. But just I think it's interesting here for me. There's a lot of scientific work being done here, a lot of research with the universities and industry consultants and government scientists, traditional use studies. But what I find really interesting is how this information is in some ways sometimes it kind of the end. That's the result is you get a paper, you get a data set, and great, now it's done. But that's certainly not that's just part of the story. What I really like about talking to the community, to the elders, the children, we go to the schools and we let them know about what we're doing, and they want to be involved in it. And there's this now national organization that we can also invite into our community and say, hey, here's what we're doing, not just us. Here's what other people are doing, and hopefully we're learning from each other as we go, and we're applying best practices as we understand them. One just quick anecdotal story is we had elders telling us when we were doing our mapping of the caribou migration and their life cycle. And the elder said, here's this island in the middle of Bistieux Lake. And if you put your cameras here and here and here, you're going to find the female with calf coming to this island, having calves, raising the calves for the first season on this island. And it's a natural predator refuge. And so what we did was, of course, we've set up some cameras there and our equipment. And sure enough, after season 1, we saw calves, females with calf, and very few predators, right? And so that story about, how this information, it's probably in the government telemetry data somewhere, but nobody was looking for it in this way. That it wasn't, it was known. But that story wasn't told about how these animals were using it. And one really cool part about that story is the way the lake is kind of a glacial remnant is that when the glaciers retreated, there were like striations, I think eskers, and rock ledges that were formed. And so there to the lake and from the mainland, there's these 2 really shallow rock ledges that you can actually walk along, because we were wondering how do the baby caribous, that's too far to swim. Sure enough, there's intergenerational learning happening on the maternal side. So the caribou moms are, teaching this to the daughters, and when the daughters, it's their turn to, have their own families, they know where the rock ledges are, and they can walk across. It's like walking across water. And there's this, magical place that's just natural as a perfect place to raise their babies. It's so beautiful, that story, and this is the kind of story that we want to be able to share with, with the consortium, and I'm sure each community has their own story like that. And so just, to bring caribou science, less as an academic, less as a research data exercise, and start telling the stories that are meaningful as us to humans, as emotional beings, that there's culture, there's intergenerational knowledge that's happening in species that are not us. it's not only humans that, care about their families and want the best for their future generations. And this is happening in nature, in our, in our shared territories, and as we share them with caribou as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Matt. That's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. Yeah. And we need to hear those stories because it's not just you that need to care about caribou, right? We need to incite the rest of Canadians to also care about caribou. We're really in that moment where we all need to get behind caribou, and it's precisely that kind of story that will help us to reach the hearts and minds of all Canadians so that we can make sure they have a future here. Thank you. Senator Beatty, I'm curious to know from your perspective how you see this. I know you've been in politics for most of your career. How do you see, how do you leverage a body like the NBCKC to really advance Indigenous rights and the rights of your communities to do this work and to lead this work in your relationship with caribou and to steward your lands?
Yeah, thank you very much. In terms of our Indigenous rights and, under whether you're talking under treaty or under UNDRIP or, everybody knows about UNDRIP, I hope. I hope you know what I'm talking about. United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And I think Canada just is working on an act or has passed an act, right? UNDRA, United Nations Declaration Act. And, but in terms of this consortium, I'm hoping to bring that to the forefront as well. I'm probably the newest member here. I'm a baby, so I'm not really that familiar with the workings of the group. But I know what the end game is going to be, and that's the protection of boreal caribou in Canada, and so amalgamating or integrating traditional knowledge with scientific knowledge and coming to an understanding and reaching a goal. That's what I hope to see. And I think that, I really appreciate what Walter said as well. I know that there's so many things that are impacting the boreal caribou. And that has to do with governments as well and their policies. In our province, in years past, and Robin knows this because I worked with him for several years regarding wildfires, and I was involved in that from a very young age as a forest firefighter, and but in recent years, that policy has changed from suppressing fires to trying to manage wildfires. You try to manage a wildfire, you're going to have a heck of a time trying to manage that. And we've been trying to pass that message on to the provincial government that, if you let, especially today, in today's climate change era, where we're experiencing extremes in weather patterns, very high heat or very high water precipitation and high winds. If you've been around as long as I have, and I'm about 100 years old, you see the changes from the 1960s to the 2000s, and you can see the change in the weather patterns. Climate change affects the local weather patterns as well. And so if you see that, and then you form a policy that says, well, fire is good for the forest. It's good, it's natural. In times past it was, because you could rely on the changes from the dry season to the rainy season. And you knew that, if you had a forest fire out there in the boreal forest, the rains would come along and take care of it. And then also you had a suppression fire crew that would suppress that fire Today they try to manage it. They monitor it first, and if it gets to be a huge forest fire, then they try to manage it. You can't manage a huge forest fire, no. And you're destroying habitat. And especially for boreal caribou, woodland caribou, they feed on the lichen on the ground. We call it white moss. And you destroy that. And in our area, up in the Precambrian Shield, the soil might be a few inches in depth over the Precambrian Shield. That will take a long time to regenerate, a long time. So when that happens, then the boreal caribou have nothing to eat, so they move off to other areas to find food. And it affects their migratory patterns and where they've been existing for thousands and thousands of years. So I'm happy to be able to at least have a forum to discuss all of that and to be part of a group, I think, that's trying to get to a goal, you know, nationally in terms of protecting the caribou. But I think it's the bottom line is protecting the environment, because the boreal caribou are a sensitive animal to the environment, very sensitive to human activity, to industrial activity. I've seen it, and I talk from experience. So for me, it's a great opportunity, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin.
Thanks, Peter. That was a good story. It's a good venue to have where you can go share your knowledge that you carry from past generations. Because our knowledge that we carry as Indigenous people is passed down from way back. Normally, Indigenous people don't use numbers like years. We know that the scientific world says that the world is 4 million, or is it 4 billion? Something like that. It doesn't really matter to us. We just know it's old. That's all you need to know, and you get by just as good. But it's a place that I know that eventually our knowledge will be part of any decision making with the government, and then we you know, we have a place. Right now we don't. You know, we're bypassed in most cases when it comes to decisions, especially with climate change. You know, they're not running to our band offices and saying, we need your help. We need your help to save the world. And some of the prophecies out there says that, you know, the rest of the world is going to come to the Indigenous world and ask for help. And what can we do? We just have to wait for science to make up their mind and say, we need that knowledge. You know, we need this ancient knowledge to make these decisions for the future. You know, we're just waiting. You know, and a good start is the consortium, where Matt can take down my words and share them with his higher ups. I mean, that's the whole purpose of the consortium, is to have kind of like a filter to get to the decision makers and share our knowledge with them. And there's only valuable things to gain from our knowledge. Like, we're willing to share, but you have to come to us. You have to come to us and say, we want your knowledge. I see that day coming, but I don't see it immediately. Like, we're still having a hard time convincing the scientists that our knowledge is valid. Like we validate most of the science that's been developed for the past 200 years. You know, I'll give you an example. There was a wolf that attacked one of the employees in Key Lake, and they wanted answers. Why did that wolf attack the individual? So what did they do? They looked for an expert. Science is big on experts. So they go to an expert in Alaska, brought him down, and he did all the research and did his report, and Cameco asked the expert, so why did the wolf attack this person? And he goes, I don't know, you should talk to the local people. Instead of going to a scientist, go to the local people, and the local people will give you an answer just like that. You know, they're not pets. That's one thing that the elders will tell you. They're not pets. You can't pet them. They're animals. You know, they will eat you. The guy didn't know that. He was trying to pat that wolf and attacked him. So just a simple little thing that doesn't need any scientific information to get to the answer. And there's tons and tons of examples that I can give you where indigenous knowledge can give you the answer. So this is what I'm hopeful for the consortium is hopefully get the ear of the federal and provincial government that we're not being forceful to have our voice, and we never will. You know, you have to come to us. And that's a very important message that I'd like to share here, is that you have to come to us. You have to come to our door. Don't be afraid to come to our door, but don't come to us and say, we'd like to take over your knowledge with our science. That'll never work. We wouldn't collaborate with anything like that, but we would collaborate together on some key answers to climate change. I mean, nobody's asking indigenous people about climate change. They won't speak up unless you come to them. Give them a pouch of tobacco. You know, that's the custom. If you want knowledge, you got to pay for it. And I'm not talking money. I'm talking about paying with tobacco. Thank you.
Thanks, Robin. Lori.
All right. So I think too often in the past, discussions about caribou happened behind closed doors with the federal government and the provincial and territorial governments. And what's happened now since the establishment of the NBCKC is a whole variety of partners are brought to the table. So as an industry representative, we're part of the discussions, but more importantly, we're hearing from Indigenous communities across the country, and I think that's really critical. We often work in silos within our provinces and territories, within our departments or industries, but the benefit of the NBCKC is we're able to hear the variety of voices, and that's where I've gained a lot of value. It's not just Indigenous communities in Alberta that I'm hearing from, but I'm hearing stories across the country, which is really important, and it helps inform my way of thinking. And the way we are working as an NBCKC is really knowledge dissemination, and you've heard about that CCLM portal, and that's not just caribou, it's wetlands and reclamation as well, but there is this forum and there's this venue for getting that information out, and we're having webinars with all these voices around the table, so it's really critical and it's been very impactful for the work that I do.
Beautifully succinct. Thank you, Lori. Matt, would you like to?
I see I have the microphone, so I'll just say one thing that I have learned, I think we've all learned, is that meaningful collaboration is way more difficult than doing things in silos, so expect that. But it's really worth it, and you get a product that everyone's going to stand behind, and when you have that, you save yourself tons of trouble in the end.
Fantastic. Thank you all for sharing so generously with us today. Just a quick round of applause because we're going to turn it to the questions in just a second. Thank you. I feel like we're just warming up and we could keep going, but this is the way these panels work. We have a clock telling us exactly that we have 14 minutes left, which is great. I'd love to hear from the audience if there are any questions about the NBCKC, about how it works, or any questions to the members here about any of the stories that they shared that you might want to hear a bit more about. Yes. There's a microphone right here. And if you can't, are you good?
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Pierluigi Bozzi, Coordinator International University Network on Biodiversity and Cultural Diversity. Our focus is on the Global South and indigenous people's rights and the local community indigenous people's knowledge. It is so interesting, and I want only to listen from you and learn. But at the same time, I would be happy to share what is our view and what we are doing to promote, traditional knowledge, but not only traditional knowledge. This one is the key point. We proposed in the draft text of the GBF, the Global Biodiversity Framework, one target that negotiators transformed in one fundamental pillar in one section. In section, now I am reading in section C, that is very important because it is a criteria to implement the entire Global Biodiversity Framework. So we presented the text on education, on traditional knowledge and traditional systems. I want to read because this one is an instrument. And this one is an instrument all the governments must apply. So, formal and informal education, implementation of the framework requires transformative, innovative, and transdisciplinary education, formal and informal, at all levels, including science policy interface studies and lifelong learning processes. Recognize, this one is the key point we introduced, recognizing diverse worldviews, values, and knowledge systems of indigenous peoples and local communities. So this one is the first time that there is a recognition of indigenous knowledge system, worldviews, and values in the educational sector. And you discussed about education. We know knowledge system is fundamental, but knowledge system can be maybe not only, but can be the perspective of products. We need to preserve and promote processes. And the processes are learning processes, education, formal and informal. I would be so happy to share more and learn more from you. And anyway, we will try at a global level to promote this implementation. It is not easy. It is not easy because I have to repeat again what I am telling now to thousands of persons who don't know about this measure that is an international and national policy measure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for all your hard work and to all the negotiators who got clauses such as the one you just read us into that convention. It's not easy work. Yes, let's hear from you, and then we'll turn to the panelists to react to what was just shared as well as your question. Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. I'm Isabelle Ménard. I'm a union advisor, and I'm also a biologist. I'll try in English, but maybe I'll switch in French. Okay. Really, it's really a nice model to hear about all the collaboration you have between all of you. And because the caribou is also related to the forest and the way it is managed, I want to know if the Ministry of Natural Resources and workers are included in your collaboration and how they work with you.
I'll start this one if that's okay. The Ministry of Natural Resources is one of our key members. They actually co-lead the Habitat Restoration Working Group. So that's out of Ottawa. But they're also one of our main table members. I believe they have 3 representatives at the table.
Matt, do you want to, it just occurred to me, do you want to name the different working groups that you have at the NBCKC?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. When Walter was talking about the model, he's referring to the ecological model for caribou, and that's one of the first things the Habitat Restoration Working Group tackled. They really, in order to understand how different impacts were impacting caribou, we really had to understand the whole pathway in order to be able to model appropriately. So that's one of the first things that NRCan and the Restoration Working Group did. We also have a monitoring working group. That's our oldest working group, and it's the most prolific working group. They've produced several tools that can help people who have never monitored caribou go to active monitoring potentially the next week. That's how clear these tools are. And they're designed for all levels of audience. They've been produced in multiple languages. We have the Indigenous Knowledge Circle, which isn't a working group. It's a sister group to the NBCKC, all of which the panelists are members here. It meets on its own, but it's separate but equal to the NBCKC, and they have their own decision-making powers. We also have the management working group. This is people who are working on managing caribou, whether it's by maternal penning or wolf kills or you name the method. They look at that and they basically are assessing what's working and what's not working and what methods to avoid. I think I got all of the working groups.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got about 7 minutes left, and I'd just love to give a chance to the panelists to have a last word, either to respond to a question or the comment that the gentleman made here, or just, a last thought that you would like to leave the folks in the room with. So I'll start with Walter. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, and Walter, just before you go, just please be mindful of the time. We just need to get through everyone before our 7 minutes wraps up.
Okay, I'll be quick. So I'm a hunter, and I like to undertake methods to be successful in my hunting. And I'm kind of the same way in project management and when I want to solve a problem. From that perspective, I see as this COP was a win, and I kind of hope, if I'm looking for a vision, what I'd like to see in the future. There's been a lot of studies that have been done on caribou. We've heard that. We've got lots of information. I also know that some First Nation groups in BC have been very successful with some of their stewardship programs. We need to see those stewardship programs, what works, and trying these in our other parts of the country. I mentioned we have 4 caribou ranges in just where I live. There should be, 30 by 30, can I say that? Yes. In each one of those in caribou ranges, because the numbers are decreasing or just staying level, and it's not going the right way. So we need to do something, and we clearly have the science, we have the knowledge, we have some experience with, I'm going to say, some winning projects in British Columbia. We need that repeated in all of the other provinces, and I want to leave it there. Thank you for coming up and bringing that information out. I haven't read everything that's taken place, but that sounded really, really good. I think that's what we need to do.
Thanks, Walter.
Yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to raise the idea of boundaries. So often in conservation, so often in our research and our discussions politically, we're talking about human boundaries. Provinces, territories, countries, caribou ranges, different jurisdictions, overlapping territories of Indigenous communities, and on and on. What I would like to see happen more often is talking about the traditional territories of species and looking at a multi-species approach where we're mapping out where species live. Where are their special places? Where do we need to, look at watersheds look at, intact areas that, that species needs for its life cycle. We have migratory birds that are transnational. We have oceanic species. We have more local populations that maybe occupy a niche. So what I would like to see is less about human boundaries and more about natural boundaries. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Senator Beatty.
That was very good. I was just going to say that, but no, I like to be a little bit more, bring a little bit of levity or fun to the situation. And being a politician, of course, I'm a joker, so in some people's eyes. Anyway, thank you for putting that into the agreement. I think that's a very central part to that and making it work. And I think that going forward, I hope to see implementation. I mean, we've studied caribou to death, I think. We've studied the environment to death. I think now is the time for action. And I'm looking forward to see what that action is going to be in the next 5 years, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, up to 2030. What's it going to look like in 2030? Is 30% of the planet going to be protected for biodiversity? I mean, in our traditional knowledge, and I'm going to take the rest of you guys' time, so you might as well get off the stage. No, I'm just kidding. In our traditional knowledge, everything is connected. We have a sacred circle. Everything is connected. You know, you talk about silos and everybody being in their own little silo and protecting their own little knowledge base. Well, in our world, it's a circle. Everything moves in a circle. And so everything is connected. Whether it's people, whether it's animals, whether it's the flora and fauna of the environment, everything is connected. So if we can all look at it in that way, I think we'll be a lot better off. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Robin, you got 30 seconds.
I was going to say that. I agree with most of the comments that these folks shared. I like that. I'd like to get a copy of that so that we can provide input. I hope they'll give us a chance as Indigenous people to provide input into the implementation of that agreement. I just wanted to say that Saskatchewan, the Prince Albert Grand Council is looking at penning as part of their work. He said without penning, putting them on islands. We do have an island where we're studying right now. We're just trying to get the elders to support it. That's where we're at.
I just want to say thank you to all the panelists and Amanda. And I also want to say I've seen the crazy magic that can happen when you have meaningful collaborations. I'm so excited to be back here in 2030 telling you all about how we've done a lot for caribou.
And I have 30 seconds. We're in this momentous point in history. We have signed on to the bond challenge here in Calgary, in Canada. We're part of this massive UN Decade of Restoration. We have a lot of work to do to get that restoration implemented for boreal caribou across this country. And where we really need to go right now is building the capacity within Indigenous communities for all aspects of the restoration, from the operational planning to the tree planting to the seed collection to the actual restoration treatments on the ground, and then of course the monitoring with the Indigenous guardians. So very critical we build that capacity.
Thank you. And thank you to all of you for your wonderful contributions to this conversation. I wish we had the rest of the day to continue on with the conversation, but join me in thanking our panelists for their contributions. May we all be part of the solution and the action going forward to implement this amazing framework that we are celebrating today. So have a wonderful day.